Welcome to Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento today and joined by Senator George Runner. He's a member of the Board of Equalization. And during the Obama years, I think it's fair to say that California and Washington were well aligned.
Sure.
Arguably, whereas Texas was at war.
Right.
With Washington.
Sure.
Now we've seen this script flipped.
Yes.
We have Texas aligned beautifully with Washington, and California is in a ballistic battle with Washington and the new administration.
We really are in an interesting time,
Yes.
and I think we're seeing it back in Washington, as whole new groups of people are coming into leadership. Cabinet positions are being filled.
Right.
And I think what we're seeing then in states, and California is certainly
Sure.
one of those, they're trying to figure out their relationship with this new administration.
But what's interesting to me is, look, in our lifetimes, there have been Republican presidents, and the state has been fairly blue. During the George W. Bush years, I mean, it wasn't, peaches and cream, but there wasn't this level of vitriol.
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously
You were
in the
here.
legislature during
Yeah.
the time.
Was it?
And no, it wasn't. We didn't. There were no
Yeah.
resolutions at the beginning of the year like we had here in Sacramento, where we were, basically laying out this treaty,
Right.
this treatise about what we're going to do and why we're opposed to things in Washington. I don't know. I think we all recognize it. There seems to be a pretty deep divide.
Right.
And you know what? I think that's understandable. I guess because of the kind of the positions that you heard through the campaign.
Right.
I think part of it is there was a denial as to what took place too. Remember? I mean, we were all here on election night, right?
We all
and everybody
presumed.
was stunned.
I mean, it was a stunning
So
upset.
I think part of it is this kind of almost a cathartic response to trying to get through
Right.
it too. But at the end of the day, I think what we need to remember is that we do depend a great deal on Washington when it comes to some of the issue of federal regulation,
Right.
of federal support for different kinds
Sure.
of things. And I think we have to be careful we don't paint ourselves in a corner.
I think what's upsetting to some Californians is that the new president arguably seems to be itching for the fight. He makes statements about how California's out of control. That's a tough one. We all want our president to do well. We start with this reservoir of goodwill.
Clearly, we and again, these are temperaments and personalities that we deal with, right? And we'll see what the long-term outcome of
Right.
that is. But certainly, we can probably all pretty much agree that the idea of, hey, the election's over, let's all come together, is something that neither the right nor the left is embracing very well these days.
And let's talk about that, because, look, there's enough blame to go around. But could one argue, sir, that Donald Trump won the election? He is now our president. He is the president of our 50 United States. Act as the president of all 50 United States.
I think that's a reasonable request and hope at that point. At the same time, I think that we need to then give people some room for who they are as a person too.
Okay.
I mean, how it is that you communicate may not always be the same. I think there's some place for argument that maybe we need a little more of a stronger shakeup when it comes to relationships within people, not only within the United States, but also with other countries around the world. So I think those are all reasonable issues. And I think what we need to do is kind of sit back and watch and see what happens for a while, rather than react the way that I think that I've seen.
Yeah.
Because here's what I know takes place.
Please, sir.
What I know takes place, for instance, is we have these high debated moments on the floor over there in the legislature here in California saying, we condemn this, we don't like this, we don't want this. But yet, I talked to enough of my Republican colleagues over there to say privately, these Democrats come to them and say, hey, can you get Secretary so-and-so
Right.
to come on out here to California?
Right.
Can you get them to come over? And I think that there's this, I think we need to be careful that our posturing, and a lot of it's just plain old posturing, isn't getting in the way of the kind of relationship that we need to do in order to take care of Californians.
Well, let us remember, for example, we've suffered a very serious event at the Orville Dam.
Right.
And arguably, we need federal assistance.
I heard, you know,
Right.
just right the night
Yeah.
that night that it was happening, I heard the governor, you know, declaring the emergency, calling on Washington to try to, you know, for services. And again, I hope, I don't think that somehow somebody's going to then, you know, say, oh, that's California, we don't go help them. But I think at the end of the day, we have to understand, well, we do have this symbiotic relationship, and we need to be able to build relationships. And so we need to have somebody who we are calling on the phone, who is sympathetic, who wants to help, who wants to provide services.
I wonder if someone like George Runner can act as a bridge. Because look, I know you're George Runner, but you're one of very few, I guess you're not technically elected entirely statewide, but you're a statewide elected official. You know, there are two of you and Diane Harkey. You represent 10 million Californians. That's as big as the state of Michigan. Can you?
Well, I think it's going to be incumbent upon all of us, whether it's myself.
No, but I'm going to push you a bit, if you don't mind, because look, not only do you represent 10 million Californians, but you've been in the Assembly, you've been in the Senate. You have a view that a lot of folks don't have. You know California, you know our state government. Can you be a bridge? Can you be that
Well,
bridge?
I think we all need to be. I think, and I'm glad to be able to do what I can do, you know, in that process. But ultimately, I think it's going to be an important time for us to not be you know, waving red flags and posturing in order to somehow beat our chest and you know, play to the most angry parts of our supporters. Ultimately, we've got to figure out how to do things for California.
But forgive me, I'm going to push you a little more. But could you and Member Harkey, Diane Harkey, as the two highest elected officials that are Republicans in the state, contact the Speaker, contact the Governor, contact the Pro Tem and say, let us be the emissaries? I mean, I guess we have Kevin McCarthy, member of Congress.
Right.
But look, you're here.
Well,
you're on
because
the
we're here in
ground.
California.
Yeah, you're.
But you know, I mean, even today, you know, it was kind of like, you know, as we were preparing for the show, we ran into one of our colleagues, right, from the legislature, and we said, well, maybe we can do some debate. And remember, the question was, well, you do Trump, I'll do, you know, and it's got to see, we got to get away from that. The election's over. It's no longer debating. We're no longer in this election process. We're no longer electing a president. We got to figure out how to govern together.
You know what I wonder though? I think, you know, just as my kind of armchair prognosticator, Donald Trump won the election in large part, in my opinion, on his economic message.
Yes.
And that's something that you're an advocate of, jobs, jobs, and more jobs. And we haven't heard a lot of that lately. Is that something that you can push on behalf of California?
I do believe it was an economic message, and I believe that's why it is that you saw some of those states that traditionally were Democrat that flipped simply because the Democrats had almost a coastal view, and they missed what was happening in the center of the nation.
Clearly.
And I think that is true, and I think, you know, in a strong way, California's the same way. We have a coastal economy, and we have an inland economy.
So much
that
so.
coastal economy is very different than that inland economy that we have, which is a big part of the district I represent. And I think we all need to understand, both as Democrats and Republicans, that we've got to figure out how we can best work through how to make sure we're serving all of the folks.
I'd love
in
for
our
you to
states.
come back to continue the conversation.
Good. We're glad to, Brad.
You bet.
Thank
He
you.
is George Runner, member of the Board of Equalization. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento, Local Edition.